63% of men in the United States are single. And no, it's not because they're players or picky or emotionally unavailable. It's because the dating pool isn't filled with women who are ready to build. It's filled with women chasing something else: validation, independence, status, and personal freedom, all at the cost of connection. In part 1, we expose the new rules of the dating game, how the deck is stacked, how culture rewards the loud, curated, and combative, and how finding a woman with traditional values in today's world can feel a lot like trying to find gold in a glitter factory. But here's the thing: even if you spot the red flags, even if you've learned to filter out the noise, none of that matters if you collapse at the first sign of affection. If you compromise your values the moment a beautiful woman shows you attention, or if you don't have the internal structure to hold the thing that you say that you want. You don't rise to the level of your ambitions or your potential. You fall to the strength of your foundation. This video isn't about dating tactics. This video is about fortification. Because the most dangerous thing isn't a toxic woman. It's a hollow man pretending that he's ready for something sacred. I'm going to walk you through 5 critical inner structures that every man must build to avoid collapsing. If you've ever looked back and thought, how did I not see that? Or why did I stay? Or what made me tolerate that? Then this one's for you. Now, let's build what makes you unshakable. Even if you see the red flags, you'll ignore them if you're starving. This is where men who struggle with this really need to work on inner reinforcement. And if that's you, then here are 5 things to focus on building. Number 1 is emotional sovereignty, meaning I want love, and maybe I want her to love me, but I also don't need it. And you certainly don't need it in order to feel whole. This is where you need to build a life that isn't standing on one leg, that one leg being her. You want to focus on your mission over validation and brotherhood over loneliness. Because most men will say, I'm fine alone, but secretly hope to be saved by a woman. And the collapse point comes when you find somebody mildly feminine and you project this entire fantasy onto her because you're touch-starved and spiritually hungry. The second thing we need to focus on is discernment over desire. Just because she's beautiful and says the right things doesn't mean that she's the woman for you. So we have to start to build and value long-term concepts such as long-term thinking, delayed gratification, and pattern recognition over time. And the biggest mistake that most people make, male or female, in any relationship is confusing connection and chemistry with compatibility. And I have an entire video on these concepts if you're not familiar with what they actually are and what they look like. And unfortunately, overlooking this very important element leads to your collapsing point. You overlook and justify the red flags because you fear this is your only shot at connection. Next, we need a developed mission. You want to find something that you are inspired to build with or without her. You need to find something that transcends female approval, a vision for your life, or at least an element of contribution. And the biggest pitfall with this is men tend to use their success as a lure, not as their own spiritual anchor. And what happens when you do this is that when you inevitably hit a low point, you seek out a woman to fill that emotional gap. And this only leaves you open to manipulation and distraction. Now, this next one is the most important thing, and I need you to hear me when I say this. But you need to have masculine boundaries that you uphold unapologetically. You don't need to argue about your principles, you just walk. And what this means, or what this might look like for you, is understanding what your core values actually are. Do you have any type of code, moral code, spiritual code? And what are your non-negotiables, things that you are not going to bend on whatsoever? And it's really important for you to have these in mind prior to getting into a relationship with somebody. Because when you aren't clear on any of these things, in a relationship where emotions can be blinding, the goalpost of what you will tolerate starts to move. Now, it might be difficult for somebody to uphold these things because they fear looking like they're being controlling or super rigid. So what happens inevitably is you allow the female chaos to run the show. And unfortunately, this leads many men to be in a relationship relationship where their masculinity isn't respected, it's just tolerated. And the fifth one is having some brotherhood, male relationships and friendships, because other men will get you, and as much as I try, in ways that I probably can't. And this is where it's important to build trusted male friendships, coaches, elders, mentors. And an important note on this is make sure that you surround yourself with men who you are inspired by, men that you would like to be like. Because just as we've talked about in previous videos around female relationships and the impact it has on their behavior, your male friendships have the exact same impact. And so if you're hanging around men who you don't admire, that you don't respect, you will end up just like them. And so surrounding yourself with men who you are inspired by, who you want to be more like, who you can learn from, and who will challenge you when you're acting outside of your best interest is critically important. And the biggest pitfall for most men is they have this lone wolf syndrome, that they can just figure out life alone and that they're going to be fine. But the reality is, when you isolate, you spiral. And we know this from a mental health perspective, that most people who struggle with mental health issues, they don't have a lot of social interaction or support. And in a relationship dynamic, this is what leads people to trauma bond with the opposite sex, because it's the only exposure that you have to another person where it feels like somebody sees you, when truly you just haven't allowed yourself to be seen by anybody else. So now that we've covered those 5 fundamental things that men need to integrate for themselves, not for the sake of getting into a relationship, and in our previous video, we covered the red flags, I want to move into covering what flags are green. And again, these are micro signals, so these aren't going to be loud and obvious, but they're very important to notice and pay attention to. In fact, they're often very subtle, which is why most men tend to overlook them, especially when they're emotionally starved or caught up in lust. The first one to look out for is a calm nervous system, aka low reactivity. She doesn't over-personalize or dramatize, or just seek out chaos to feel connection or grab your attention. This, from your perspective, signals that she has emotional regulation and inner peace. She doesn't require you to make her okay. This often shows up as graceful disagreement, not name-calling, not minimizing, not emasculating, not disrespecting. Very deep listening, so she's paying attention to you. She might reflect back what you've said to her to make sure that she understands what you're saying. And a lack of chronic drama stories. If somebody has a ton of drama stories, I promise you it's not the other person, okay? Okay. And the insight on this and why it's an important green flag is because feminine women in their true power do not need to dominate the emotional field. So they create space, not firestorms, because one thing that is not talked about enough is that women aren't the only ones who need safety. Men do too. And if it's always me, then it's never we, and there's never space for you. The second one is a gratitude reflex. She frequently says thank you and shows appreciation for even the smallest of things. And when you observe her, she actually lights up when you take initiative and lead. Why this is important is it signals receptivity and an orientation towards abundance, not entitlement. So things to look out for tactically: thankfulness without expectation, and emotional openness without demand. Because the reality of true femininity is it amplifies what it's presented with, and a woman who can receive well amplifies in your presence. The next one is really important for your discernment. Okay? But she provides soft challenges, not harsh critiques. And one thing I will say about men and pride is that pride is potent but fragile. And so if you're used to women criticizing you and you meet a good woman with strong values who's trying to call you up, you might feel like you're under attack, but that's not what's happening. Remember, this woman will call you up, not out. This will look like respectfully mirroring your growth edges, not emasculating you. And this is often expressed by asking thoughtful questions, not shaming or belittling you. And the cool part about a woman like this is that she doesn't try to change you. And paradoxically, because she's not trying to change you, she inspires change within you. And she does this through admiration and a belief in your capacity. So I want to get tactical with this, and I'm going to give you a few really clear examples. So a lot of women might say, why don't you make more money? It's embarrassing. That's totally emasculating, correct? But instead she might say, you're insanely talented. Have you ever considered what's holding you back from actually charging what you're worth? The difference here is that she believes in your potential. She's mirroring your growth edges, but she's doing so without attacking you or your masculinity. The next example, I'm sure you've all heard, but something to the tune of, you're emotionally unavailable. It's like dating a wall. Again, emasculating character judgments, not positive. On the contrary, a strong woman with good values who actually wants a relationship and believes in partnership might come about this a very different way. She might say, when you opened up the other day, even just that one sentence, it made me feel really close to you, and I'd love more moments like that. And what she's doing is reinforcing the behavior that she would like to see without shaming or punishing you. She's not nagging, demanding, again, or shaming. So again, these types of women see your higher self and they're going to call you to raise that waterline instead of, alternatively, tearing you down. The next green flag is that she simply just speaks positively about men. And this is really important, especially if she's been hurt by other men, because it signals that she has a healthy relationship with masculine energy, especially despite challenges that she might have faced with other men in her life. So pay attention to how she speaks about her father, her brother, or other male mentors in her life, and really pay attention that she's not demonizing all men as dangerous or stupid. And this matters because you won't have to earn your manhood in her eyes. It's already recognized, respected, and safe to express. The fifth green flag is that she's comfortable with femininity. She finds joy in nurturing, beauty, and emotional depth without needing to prove that she's not like other women. And this signals that her identity is rooted in embodied energy, not trends or historical trauma. And this often shows up as playfulness, softness, joy for taking care of people that she cares about, or even environmental things. And this is important because her femininity isn't performative. This means it's a natural flow of who she is, not a tool she's using for manipulation. She's playful and emotionally intuitive. She reads the room, senses shifts, and gently opens space for other people to feel safe. So an example of this tactically would look something like this. She might say, hey, something feels off. Do you want to talk about it, or do you just want to hang in silence? In that example, her depth and emotional attunement aren't weaponized. They are gifts that she's offering freely if you're comfortable and feel safe enough to engage with them. Again, femininity is not used as performative, persuasion, or manipulation. It's not a costume, it's a current. And because she's rooted in herself, that will magnetize other people, not by trying to not be like other women, but by being the woman who's truly herself. In green flag number 6, and this is important, and yes, I'm going to come through with some examples, but taking accountability without defensiveness. A woman who can practice accountability without defensiveness is rare and invaluable. I think we can agree. She turns tension into trust, not turmoil. And I want to give you a few examples of what this actually looks like. So you might say, I felt like you were trying to dismiss what I was saying to you last night. And a woman who fits this ideal will respond with something like this. You're right. I was distracted and not really listening. And that's entirely on me. I promise I will be more present next time. No excuses about being tired, no deflection. And this signals that she's mature enough to receive feedback without needing ego armor. Another example of this might be you saying, it hurt when you brought something up that I told you in confidence during the argument. If she can take accountability, she will respond with something like, I crossed a line there. I used something that should have stayed sacred just to win. And you know what? That's not okay. Not, well, you were yelling at me too, or you do that stuff too. Again, deflection, lack of accountability, lack of personal responsibility. Because one of the most fundamental foundational pieces that any relationship that's going to last has to have is the value of building trust over being right. And the last example I'll give you is this one. You might say, I feel like you shut down every time I bring up something serious. She would respond with something like, I do think I do that. And it's probably a defense thing, but that's not fair to you. I want to, and I'm going to work on that. No spiraling into shame. No, well, it's because of my trauma, because that's just an emotional hostage move. She's not only owning her behavior, but she's signaling a desire to grow. So fundamentally, that signals emotional maturity. And you want to watch out for owning her part without blame shifting or completely collapsing. And this is so important for any relationship because conflict resolution is a tool for intimacy. And if you don't have it, then it becomes a war for control. The next green flag is legacy-oriented thinking. She talks about family, tradition, children, and purpose, not just travel, careers, and vibes. This signals that she's forward-thinking and grounded in real relationship. And she doesn't see love as an Instagram moment, something to the tune of a highlight reel, but she sees it as a sacred construction site where you're both able to build something that is meaningful, respectful, and that you're both proud of. And the eighth green flag, which is also incredibly important to have, is that she's naturally attracted to your leadership. When a woman does feel safe and she is attracted to your leadership, she'll just relax. She doesn't resist your direction. She flows with it. For example, you might be navigating an unfamiliar city and you say, hey, let's go this way. I've got a good feeling about it. She might just smile and say, okay, lead the way. And this signals that she's not hyper controlling or anxious. Her trust in your presence allows her to drop into that moment. Versus women who do not respect male leadership will push back and criticize anything and almost everything that you do. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like a freaking headache. Or during a tough decision that you have to make, you might say, here's what I'm thinking, I've weighed it out, and if it doesn't work out, I'm willing to take full responsibility of this decision. Her response should be, okay, I support you, let's do it. Because it signals that she doesn't need to take the reins and control the situation. And when she trusts you and your leadership, she'll sense and trust intuitively that no matter what, you've got this. If you're a man who wants to play the role of leadership in your relationship, then paying attention to this is really important. But also recognize that the responsibility is on you to be the man that she can trust. So watch for her ability to follow you in very small ways. Plans, pace of your relationship, or the vision that you have. And you want to pay attention to her ability to do this without resistance or testing you. And the impact that this will have on you as a man, you will feel more like yourself, not less, in her presence. And I know that we've alluded to safety for both sexes, and I think it is very important for both. But if you're a man who wants to lead, then prioritizing her safety and trust in you is paramount to your ability to do that. Because when she does feel safe with you, she's softer, she's more playful, and she's more affectionate, which to my understanding is one of the things most men crave. And naturally, she'll let you lead without resistance. And it's not because she's weak, it's because she feels like you can hold her through it. And lastly, for your own mental stability, she won't feel the need to test, control, or compete with you, because that is insufferable. So why do men miss most of these women when they show up? I'm going to break down why this happens so that you can pay attention to some of the thoughts you have when you're presented with an opportunity. So if she's calm, regulated, and present, you might mistake her as boring if you're used to drama. And this is where you need to heal your need for spikes if you truly want something that's stable. Number two, if she's very nurturing in her femininity, you might mistake that to mean she's too easy. And likely you need to build your self-concept of worthiness in receiving love without having to earn it. If she takes accountability, you might mistake this for weakness if you're trauma bonded to intensity. And this is where you have to learn to trust peace over performance. And lastly, a respect for men. And you might think that she's faking it because it seems unrealistic or incredibly rare. So don't assume it's a trick. Test this over time and reciprocate integrity. So let's break this down by domain. We're gonna go with red flags and green flags. And yes, I'm driving this point home because so many people overlook this shit. In the domain of emotional regulation, the red flag is drama, chaos, and blame. Green flag, calm, repair, and ownership. When it comes to feminine polarity, a red flag is masculine mimicry and control. Green flags being softness, warmth, and receptiveness. For communication, red flag, therapy speak, shaming, and contempt. Green flags would be questioning, mirroring, and vulnerability. In her overall worldview, this is a very easy one to pick up on early. A red flag would be cynicism and a victim mentality. That's already going to tell you she's not going to take responsibility. Whereas a green flag would be legacy thinking, family, and gratitude. And last but certainly not least, masculinity. Red flags would be suspicion, resentment, or contempt. Green flags would be safety, alignment, and admiration. So if you've made it this far, here's what I need you to remember. You're not crazy for wanting more than what the current culture celebrates. You are not crazy, in fact, a rare gem in the modern world, for craving connection that's rooted in depth, not dopamine. And you're not asking for too much if you want accountability, admiration, and feminine softness, especially in a world that's tried to rebrand those things as outdated. But you do have to be strategic, because in this current dating ecosystem, good intentions are not enough. Discernment is survival, standards are your strength, and patience is your power. What I want you to hold on to is understanding that a woman's softness is not a weakness. It's a sign that she feels safe with you, and her ability to own her actions isn't just refreshing. You want femininity that flows, not performs, reveals alignment, not manipulation. And please hear me when I say that your leadership is not oppressive. When it's rooted in integrity, it's what allows her to relax and be her true self. And now I want to remind you of what to guard yourself against: confusing chemistry with compatibility, overlooking red flags because you're emotionally hungry, and lowering your standards just to avoid loneliness. Because you are not here to prove yourself to women who don't see you. You are here to build something with a woman who does, and who's building herself too. And that kind of woman, she's not loud, she's not everywhere, but she is watching. So keep your standards sharp, raise your standards. Make women have to work to have access to you, but keep your heart grounded. Don't be a jerk. Don't be an asshole, okay? And remember this: the man who refuses to collapse will always find a woman who's ready to rise beside him. The right woman won't feel like a rush of chemicals happening in your body. She'll feel like an exhale. Because you all say you want peace, but you need to raise your standards and pay attention to what you're paying attention to if that's truly what you want. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then I think you'll really like this one. And if not, and respectfully, fuck off. Ka-chow. Goodbye. Hasta luego.